Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Friday Lunch and Learn. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by an Olympic athlete, the first Olympic athlete we've had on these sessions. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Adam Burgess. Adam is Team GB. He was at the Tokyo Olympics in 2020, actually 2021, but they were obviously called the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. And Adam is a canoe, and we've just been practicing how to say this, slalom athlete. Adam, welcome. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for joining.
Hiya, and hello everyone. Good to see you all.
So this is going to be very much a conversation, a chat. So do feel free to drop any messages in the chat box or use the reactions and do your raise a hand as we go along and just ask any questions. I suppose my first question, Adam, is actually what is canoe slalom and how did you get introduced to the sport?
Cool. Yeah. I thought the best way to explain this is probably with a video. So I'll share the screen now, and just got one of my runs from the Olympic Games. It's about 90 seconds long. We can watch that. I might talk over it a little bit. So sharing screen. Does that work? Can we see?
Yep, all looks good.
And I'll hit play on that now. Minimize that. There we go. So essentially, yeah, canoe slalom. We race from top to bottom down a whitewater river. The fastest time wins. What makes it difficult is that we have to make our way around a series of poles. We call them gates. When you get two poles suspended above the water, we have to go through the green ones in a downstream direction, and the red ones, there's been two of those already, we have to go through in an upstream direction. So that's where a lot of the time tends to change hands. If you touch any of the poles, you get 2 seconds added to your time. And if you miss a gate, which you have to get your whole head and part of your boat must cross the line between the poles, you get 50 seconds added to your time. So you're out of the race if you miss one, essentially. Even a 2 second penalty can be incredibly costly. For example, I missed out on an Olympic medal by 0.16 of a second. I did have a clean run, so there were no penalties included on that. But as you can see in that, in tight margins like that, even 2 seconds can be really significant. The event itself is, roughly 90 to 100 seconds. So it's very anaerobic, kind of like attack, back off, and there we go, just sprint into the line. Let's go back onto stop the share. Cool. So hopefully, that gave a bit of an example of what it's like. And just one of the things I love about it is it's, there's no right way to approach canoe slalom. Everyone's so different. Everyone's got their own style. When I was growing up, the two guys that dominated my event, one was this really tall, quite lanky guy, the other a really short, stocky fella. So it really shows, any body type, any style can work. And it's one of the fascinating things for me is, I get to put my own stamp on it. With breath work, this is something new that, I believe is something of a superpower to add in against my competition.
Just going back, I know we're going to chat about breathwork, and we're going to chat about the fact that you are just about to certify as an Oxygen Advantage coach, which is fantastic news. But how did you actually become attracted to the sport in the first place?
Yeah, so I started the sport when I was 10 years old. So 19 years ago now, doing it a long time. What you saw there was like an Olympic standards whitewater course. a lot of gradient from the top to bottom, fast flowing water. Obviously, we can't start out like that. I started out on essentially a stream. I'm from a little bit up the road in Stoke-on-Trent, and that's where I started. And yeah, I did a lot of other stuff at that time. I was playing football, I was swimming, I was, generally very active, but so quickly, canoe slalom just took over everything I was doing. Only within a year or two, I think it was probably when I watched the Athens Olympics in 2004. That was probably the first real moment where there was a British guy that won a silver medal there, and I remember meeting him like a month or two later, and just thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do. So yeah, it's been serious for quite a long time now.
And it's interesting because we were chatting literally just before we came on about how can you plan for such a sport as well, because we were saying that, like, if you're running a marathon, then you can pretty much be guided. You can see what the weather's going to be like, so you can get an idea of your environment. For a lot of other sports, but for that, you really are guided by how the water moves. So it's not so easy to plan for, I presume.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very much, one of those sports where it's about what happens on the day. In training, where everyone's got their own approach, but I like to break it up into two categories. I'm either out there trying to get better at canoeing, in terms of, upskilling technically, and then the other half of that is getting better at racing. So, seeing stuff for the first time, just going for it, without much of a plan, or going blind, we call it sometimes, so not even looking at the course, just going and learning to trust my instincts, because it's the hardest thing on race day. And yeah, it's something that certainly within my coaching group, we're very much about adaptability and instinctive paddling, whereas previous, I've been one of those people who likes to take control, almost know every single stroke that I'm going to do down the course. And the reality is that it just doesn't go like that. But it's the hardest thing to do, when the stakes are high, to release that control and be like, what, actually, all I'm going to think about is where I'm looking. Where maybe the difficult points to breathe might come on. We can come into that. I like to call it like a responsible level of decisions that we make. Otherwise, it's very much just trusting instincts.
And it's challenging. I didn't realize like how many points you got or how many seconds you got added by just touching a pole or something like that, and actually having to get through those poles as well. So you said about cross training or other stuff that you do. You think about your racing. What other stuff do you do? I know we're going to talk about breathing, but is there anything else apart from the breath work that you do in terms of training for yourself?
So I'm really into climbing. On the side, I don't get to do it super often. I've been enjoying that since finally going to the games, because I was banned from going for quite a long time, just in case anything went wrong. But yeah, I practice yoga. As a spectator, I like my football. But really, yeah, it's almost entirely canoe slalom, and I think just generally, I think probably through yoga, just interested in movement. So a lot of my gym sessions now look a bit different to just, it's not just weights now. I've been interested in body weight training, gymnastics, rings in particular, for quite some time now as well. So these sorts of things, and yeah, we've spoken about it, that I'm a runner now, which like I never thought we'd see the day. My legs are for walking to the river to get in my boat, and then I'm kneeling in. It's one thing people that I should have mentioned this is that I'm actually kneeling in that boat. So that comes with certain issues, but since since practicing breath work, I guess it became a way to start to challenge that in a new way. So originally, I wasn't in my head, I wasn't going out to go for a run. I was going out to practice breathing. And then, over time, I've kind of caught the bug a little bit since the games, and I'm going like at least twice a week now. I'm really enjoying it.
Brilliant. And you mentioned yoga there, so I believe you trained as a yoga instructor as well, so you're a certified yoga instructor.
Yeah, so I'd done that through 2019, 2020, just my 200-hour hatha yoga instructor training. And that for me started, it was 2017. I was rehabbing a shoulder injury, and it was kind of all through sort of neck, shoulder, collarbone, ribs. It was all a bit of a mess in there. And one of the things that was suggested that might help would be to learn to breathe better. And the first step I took with that was actually go to my mum's yoga class, and got my ass kicked. As someone who does a relatively extreme sport, is into lifting weights and things, it was quite humbling. But the athlete in me there sees, there's an opportunity here to learn something, and that's kind of where this sort of, I guess, newer journey into being a bit more holistic with training sort of started.
I think this is really exciting to have someone of your level bringing the idea of yoga, breath work, and all of this to people of your age group and your teammates and things. So was it that yoga that brought you to Oxygen Advantage? How did you get involved with breath work in a little bit more detail? And how did you, when was the first time you realized it was making a difference?
So pretty early on, actually. It was one of my first teachers just recommended that I read the Oxygen Advantage, and straight away from that point, I noticed changes. I think at that stage, I didn't change much, but started to notice improvements kind of in my general health. That was probably the main thing. So, the first time I taped my mouth shut to sleep at night, I woke up the next day just like, wow, like I've never slept before in my life. I've actually recovered. I woke up before my alarm. I felt amazing. And I've taped pretty much every night since. So many things started kind of clicking into place for me with that. So, I always say, I had the worst hay fever of anyone that I know growing up. I put my back out once from sneezing too much. It was really intense. And certainly the last few years, I've barely taken any medication for it. I don't at all now. And I noticed that sort of thing pretty early on. And it just shocked me so much that, as someone involved in elite sport, access to absolute world-class practitioners in physio, sports medicine, strength and conditioning, all of that. Not once did someone tell me to breathe through my nose. Yes, it was pointed out when I was injured that, maybe you're breathing a little bit out the top of your chest. But from what I understand now through the Oxygen Advantage, the biomechanics, it's just one element, and I guess to be breathing functionally, there's more than just that we have to look at. But with the Oxygen Advantage, for me, it's really more in the last, I think since the first lockdown, that I decided to revisit it and take it more serious. So I remember at the start, I was checking bolt score, trying to build up my steps on the exhale. And to start with, I think my first bolt score was about 10 seconds, which I find that really interesting. As someone who, I'm competing internationally, I was already a senior medalist at this point. So like clearly this isn't related to fitness. It's something else. So that was something that just really interested me. And yeah, I mean, I felt like I got to a place that was certainly better, but it was last March when I was first in lockdown. I was like, I've got so much time now. I already knew I was going to the games, and it was like, I've got over a year. What else do I want to do? How can I use this time better than other people? I couldn't go canoeing for the first 10 weeks because they closed the waterways. So I was back at home. So me and my mum we were pacing up and down the garden, holding our noses. And yeah, I was working hard at that point on what I know Gray likes to call like the sexy stuff. Really, I like the hard breath holds. It's more since starting the instructor course that I've become really interested in some of the more softer elements to it. The breathe light, more general awareness during the day. So things like this I find really difficult, and I try to be very conscious, between sentences for nasal inhales. I find, when you've gone down this rabbit hole, you can't not notice it in other people. I find it really off-putting now if I listen to podcasts and I can hear the speaker between sentences kind of almost sucking in air. It makes me want to reach out and to sort of say, like you might feel so much better if you could try some of these things. But no, it's that's kind of where I'm at now. So yeah, I felt like I got to a good level with the steps, which that's the competitor in me. It was like, I started off doing 20. I think I was in triple figures, but there was a point where my bolt score plateaued. So I think that's when using the breathe light, having more attention day to day, really small things. So, the things around speaking, always being aware of it when I'm walking or cycling to training. Particularly, I have to go over this railway bridge. There's really steep steps. So trying to, breathe silent during that. If I'm walking next to someone, I almost make it a competition. If I can hear them breathing, I'm like, can they hear me breathing? Like, I'm gonna be really quiet. These are the things that they're just so simple, and I think it's making a massive difference to like my health and longevity, hopefully, as well.
So what fascinating stuff there. So what made you getting into all of that and helping with your training, obviously, but what made you then decide you wanted to do the instructor training and become an Oxygen Advantage coach?
I think it's twofold, really. I think it's similar to why I wanted to do my yoga instructor training as well, in that I just wanted to learn more about the practice for myself. That was the main driver. And then secondly, it's like, I've got something out of this, so maybe some other people can as well. And yeah, like already use some of the techniques with my mum, which is extra rewarding, because obviously there's a bit of, I'm always going to be worried about her, and if I can see her getting healthier as a result of some of our work, then even better. And yeah, I guess they're the main reasons. And I think more to explore, it's always been the health and longevity side of it for me that's been the most interesting, but to explore some of the performance aspects, and that's been fascinating. It's definitely kind of health and stuff that I'm happier sharing, but when it's the performance side, for me, it's been pretty transformational, to be honest. I wonder, what kind of athlete I'd have been at the Olympic Games had it gone ahead on time. Because I qualified the spot. I was winning medals already at that level, and as we said, it's very much on the day. But I think, the work I've done, I probably increased my chances, which is the best you can do, I think, in our sport. You just increase your chances of getting onto that podium. And then my final run there, it was a run where nothing really went right for me. Just struggled to, find my rhythm from the word go. And the breath has been one of the tools that I think is a new thing for me that allows me to keep that run alive. So it was the hardest run I had at the games. It was just unfortunate that was the final. But I put a time on the board. And I think a year or two ago, it would have been a disaster. I'd have been 9th or 10th in that final. But instead, I was 4th, very close. And really, just proud that I put something down that was respectable.
Excellent. So I'm sure everybody's going to be really keen to know, in terms of your training, how did you incorporate the oxygen advantage and the breath work into your training, and what type of exercises did you use? Did you use the sexy ones or more of the breathe light and the functional breathing? Can you have like a typical idea of the training plan you was using?
Yeah. So yeah, I think once my breath hold time with the walking, once that got to a level, I found that, I think I probably always had a bit of a negative belief, really, that my sport was too intense for nasal breathing. It's like, it's 90 seconds, it's anaerobic. You just need the air in. I had a coach once that told me, he's like, I think I asked the question, like, how should I breathe? It was actually during running, and he was just like, like the mouth's the biggest hole, get the air in. So I think, it's just interesting, really, that, when I guess try to breathe through my nose on the water, it was incredibly difficult. And I think to start with, what I first tried to do was, okay, well, can I breathe through my nose in my recovery when I'm training? So when I finish, if we break a full run down into sections, we call it a progressive session. So it might be a 20-second effort. You stop whilst the rest of your group does it, wait for the coach to walk down, you do it again. So 1 to 2 minutes rest in between. The first step for me was that, can I breathe through my nose during this time? And yeah, I quickly noticed that immediately when I finished, that's really difficult. So sometimes I'd try to just blow a bit off straight away. So come through kind of the finish gate, maybe 3 to 5 breaths, just kind of like that, just to try and offload a bit of CO2 and then try and return to the nasal breathing. Starting to notice already that I'm getting a bit more of a sense of calmness in training, particularly between those sections. Still don't believe that I can breathe nasally during actual performance, but that's where I was at. When we started the instructor training, there was a paper, and I tried to get it up, but I think there's something wrong with the website, because I couldn't get it, but it's the Wuren's paper. And he did the great study of the nasal breathing group versus the mouth breathing group on the bike, and he tucked them up to, it was like 85-95% VO2 max, and the nasal group were keeping up, but with a lower respiratory rates, so obviously less energy expenditure through their breathing apparatus. And yeah, it was in reading that I was like, oh, so this is possible. And it's like anything, isn't it? When you can see it, you can do it, right? It's like the 4-minute mile. As soon as people believed it was possible, people started doing it. So I was like, okay, well, maybe this is on then. And I started looking at videos of athletes who I admire and stuff in my sport, and there's very few that do it, but I know the Australian team had done a bit of work with Patrick himself. In fact, they're on most of the videos on the training course. And I'd spoken to one or two of those, and they said, Lucian, our teammate, he breathes through his nose when he races. And that was it. It's like, okay, well, it's definitely possible. And if he can do it, then I am. And yeah, it didn't take long. It was just like a steady build to it. And I think it's got easier and easier. But I still think I wouldn't want to 100% commit to it during the run, because I feel like, we brace a bit with our diaphragm. I feel on the inhale at certain times we hold our breath. Some of those turning strokes that you saw, particularly in the upstream gates, I think there is a moment where we hold. So, at that point, I see there could be a slight build-up that I'm keen to just get a bit off. Quick exhale, back to the nose. This is kind of my model for it now. There's a moment on a slalom run for me, halfway, 3/4 of the way down, usually once or twice during a full run, where I need to breathe out through my mouth, or it just happens. The next breath is so key, because at that point, if I let that turn into a mouth inhale, I'm gone. You've rolled the dice at that point as to whether I'm getting to the finish line or not. The difference between nasal breathing and mouth breathing out there on the white water, the core control, the headspace, things move a bit slower. I find it's like, it's almost like having a slight limiter on the engine to make sure it doesn't break. And I'd rather be pulling effectively with less power than feel like I'm working really hard but going nowhere, because it's not connected. It's not turning into actual forwards movement. So those moments are really critical. I sometimes try to anticipate where they might happen, because in those moments it can be useful to have that one powerful exhale, to return to the nose. But yeah, that's my model at the moment. Is how I see it in the sport. There could be, I do think there was one run I did in a race this year where I think I nasal breathed for the whole performance. But I'm not, I'm not got a video of my face the whole way down, and I'm, kind of in the zone. So I can't guarantee that, but I'm certainly not. I was a bad breather to start with. So I've had a lot of work to do. I'm not quite where I want to be just yet, but definitely in a miles better place.
I think there's a really important point that you're putting across there, Adam, because like you're saying, you're not doing endurance when you're in a race, and you are using you're using your hold and your core, and you also are using that out breath. And I think that, as you say, is really important to get across. So that blowing off of that excess CO2, it's not bad breathing. It's not like you're gassing out. And I like the point you make there about the breath after that. If you almost miscalculate that next breath, you either gas out or you're back in control of the breath. I think that's a really, and again, that from a mindfulness point of view, from that mindset, is a really important stage, I would imagine, that you go through on the race.
Yeah, and I think, it's like another element of fatigue to consider. I wouldn't want to call it something that sounds too official, but I'd say like respiratory, am I saying that right? Respiratory fatigue, instead of like muscular, and not in the classic sense, more in that control of it, functional versus dysfunctional breathing, I guess. And it just starts to make a lot of sense of issues I've had in the past, in both racing and training. So and it's something now I'd be fascinated to see. I'm deciding how willing to share some of this stuff I am with the rest of my team, because obviously some of them are my competitors. But you know, I found out this week that as a team this year, we take splits of we split the race course into 5 sections. Top 2 splits, we're gold standard, which means we're either the fastest or within 5%. Bottom 2, we're red, which is outside of final standards as a team. I think about, you know, even like before the breath, you know, I've always been someone who, you know, I like to sit quite upright in the boat, good posture, efficient, economical style. I've had performances where, you know, I'm paddling down, I'm making it look so easy, it's feeling easy. Feel, you know, if you put me head to head against someone going the same pace with a different style, more like attacking, aggressive paddler, you'd be like, Adam's going to finish this run 9 out of 10 times. And I'd capsize at the end of the run. The number of race runs I've capsized in right at the end, it's not happened in a very long time now. And it would just be like a sniper in the stand has just got me. It's like, where did that come from? Because I've looked like I have so much control, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, something's gone. You know, and I liken it to kind of where I was at in training around that time when we train full length runs. So this kind of 90 to 100-second effort. You know, we don't tend to do it year round. It is the most intense thing we do. I mean, even the winter before last, so pre kind of really taking this stuff serious, I had this belief. It's like, if I'm doing full run training, I can only do 2 in the session. Most people would do 3 or 4. I'm doing 2. I'm going to do 1 straight away when the water comes on. I'm going to wait till the very end of the session, take as much rest as possible, and then I'll do my second, because I need that much time to recover between runs. And now, I mean, the contrast, I've looked at training plans from March 2020 versus March 2021. I was doing 4 runs and be off the water in 35, 40 minutes, and getting faster through the runs. Same at the Olympic Games. I mean, I was asked about it in the mix zone afterwards as to whether it was the time gap between the semi and the final that made it difficult, because we only had 45 minutes, which is short. And I had to say, no, like last week in training, I was doing full runs with 10 or 15 minutes between and going faster on the second run. That wasn't in my locker before I started this. So the kind of options that opens up in terms of, you know, recovery during the day on race day, managing energy levels, keeping the nervous system calm, the ability to do more training, more volume, more exposure to that full run, which is, you know, that's the most difficult thing, to concentrate, get everything right for that amount of time. So the ability to do more of those, it's awesome. And I think to some extent what might have been causing it was almost like, you know, if I'm breathing through my mouth, particularly during the winter months, you know, it's pretty grim out there. And you know, we're breathing in that cold air as well. Like, that's not good for our airways. I think that, you know, I was essentially telling my body every time I went training, it's like, I'm dying. So, you know, of course my body's going to try and protect itself. Of course it's going to shut my muscles down, make it feel like the fatigue is coming from my forearms, my upper arms. This is where I felt it. But really, I think it was to do with the breath. Because we did this little experiment a few years back now, where we just decided to just take way more data in training, in terms of blood lactates, heart rates, RPEs, and how we're feeling, where in the body we feel the fatigue, things like that. And when I was reporting high levels of fatigue, to my arms, my strength and conditioning coach would look at me and say, well, your lactics aren't that high, but this is what you're feeling. And there was no solution at the time. It was kind of just I don't know. I just think we went down the road of, well, let's just try and manage volume. The program very much saw me as a racehorse. It was like, well, we'll save him for the big day. We don't mind that he's 5 to 10 seconds off the pace in the winter, because we know he'll come good when it's summer, when I'm fresh and I'm not doing as much training and the air's warmer, the water's warmer. Now just the way that's changed, I think it's a sense of calmness I feel in my brain. It's the contrast between that and how I remember training used to feel makes me think that, when I'm out there, I'm purely fight or flight. And now I just feel a bit more in control. I'm noticing that I'm recovering faster. I'm not tired all the time. I used to just be, I still nap most days, sometimes twice. But that's more of like I'm in control of that. I do that because I want to. But before, I just sleep all the time. And I put it down to that.
Well, that's amazing. So all of that in terms of improved performance. So you didn't change anything else in your training apart from the breath work, I presume, or was there anything else that you changed?
At that point, no. Just an awareness of how to breathe during sessions, between efforts, and the day-to-day stuff. And it took some time. Obviously, this doesn't happen overnight. The great thing about this study, the Warren's one, is he had the nasal group training nasally for 6 months beforehand, which I believe is where some of the the discrepancies in the literature come, is when they just get, perhaps they're trained athletes, but if they're used to breathing through their mouth and then they're suddenly told to breathe through their nose, obviously they're not going to keep up with the mouth breathing group, right? You've got to get through the, I think I'm still in that stage. I'm not sure if it'll ever go away, but the snotty stage. Where I'm at now. So in terms of race day, and in training when it's competitive, when it's full run training, or when I just know it's really high intensity, that's why I bring breath holds into the training, hard breath holds. I don't go out of my way to do breath hold walks anymore. If I'm out for a walk anyway, I'm happy to do a little bit, but I like how this stuff, the beauty with the oxygen advantage, and it's something Gray was really clear on in the training as well, is you can apply this stuff to what you're already teaching or what you're already practicing, which I think great. It makes it so much more accessible. So yes, I've added some things into my warm-up, but I've got to warm up, so I'm going to be out there anyway. What I've done is I've swapped. I used to do roughly kind of, how long would it be? I'm trying to remember my old warm-up, because I do like a 2-part. I used to do like a physical warm-up and a technical warm-up, and I get out halfway just for one last look at the course. So yeah, maybe it was about 25 to 30 minutes before, right at the end of my physical warm-up, I take myself through the gears, and I end with some repeat sprint efforts. Feel a bit of anaerobic work, letting my muscles work maximally. But that's quite far away actually from the performance itself. I didn't feel comfortable doing it any closer, maybe a bit because of what we've already spoken about with like how the mouth breathing affected me. Now my first warm-up is very much about warming up aerobically. I use the many small breath holds during that. So I tend to do 2 normal breaths in and out, hold for 5, 2 normal breaths, hold for 5. I tend to do that as I paddle, you know, roughly 4 to 5 minute loop, really steady. And then yeah, I go through the gears a little bit. I paddle through like what I'm anticipating on the course. So that's where there's some turns. That's when I get out, as I usually do. When I get back in, I've got 15 minutes before the race. So I like to just do a few technical drills, a few turns, sharp stuff, just feel like that, a bit of twitch. But I've brought in the breath holds within 10 minutes of the run. And as I've got more comfortable with this, I've brought this closer and closer to performance. So actually at the games, I was probably finishing my breath holds about 10 minutes before. I finish a bit closer to 5 minutes before now. I don't start until 10 minutes before. I guess because of what we're, I guess, beginning to understand from the fairly limited literature on it, is that's the effect of that spleen contraction. I know in the textbooks it's saying, you know, between 10 minutes and an hour, but I think, you know, most of the studies are pointing a bit more to that 10-minute sort of window. So I'm trying to finish closer to, so I'm in that window, but I don't think it's just about that the breath hold gives us. You know, feeling like my airways are more open. That's the big one. I just feel like I can get more air in. The sense of calmness. You know, you can't think about anything else when you're holding your breath, especially when it gets uncomfortable. I use something similar to the shark fit exercise. So I start off paddling at walking pace. When I get that first sign, that first indicator to breathe, I up it to kind of like a slow run. And then when it's hard, that's when I flat out sprint. I usually only get 6 to 8 strokes out at that. And then I continue to breathe through my nose in the recovery. I mix it up, depends how I feel on the day. If I feel like I've really opened up after 2, sometimes I just do 2, sometimes I do 5. At the games I was doing 5, I think, but that's the last time that I felt really fit, healthy, peaking, that I could take on 5 of those in the warm-up. And yeah, and then just to rebalance. So as I go up, we tend to have conveyor belt to take us from where we're warming up into the start pool. When I get on the conveyor belt, I do more of a Wim Hof style, like hyperventilation, just 30 hard breaths. I see that as a just in case. Like I wouldn't want to start the run with increased CO2. I see that as a bit of a handicap. I mean, it's going to shoot up as soon as I start. So just to rebalance that. They're in and out through the nose though. I usually just make sure I'm more unblocked as well. And pretty much from the moment I get in the start pool, it's always intense. I feel like I'd have an awareness of it if it was the other way. But when it's particularly, you know, these high stakes races, I'm trying to breathe in for 4, out for 6. Just for that, I want to start calm, because I want to feel calm out there when I'm racing. It's something I tried to invite my Instagram following the night before the Olympic final. Everyone's watching at home. Obviously, my family couldn't be there. So I shared it on that post. I said, this is how I'm going to be breathing when I'm in the start blocks. And it was like, join me, because I know they're probably more nervous than I am at home. So it was a bit of it might calm you down as well. But I'm breathing in for 4, out for 6, that extended exhale, which actually I'd had some experience with already. So prior to my instructor training, I used that technique really on the spot, where it was at the second race of our Olympic trials in a best of 3 series. I'd won the first. I was at the second race, and I mean, I had some injury trouble in between, and I was not feeling good, and I was so nervous. I'd been okay in heats. One of my teammates had smashed it. I was like, okay, this is a race. It's a really difficult course coming up. And I was in the start blocks, and I could just feel my heart was just banging, just so fast in the start blocks. And I was like, oh, I know if I lengthen my exhale, my heart rate slows down. So I used that there, and felt like it slowed down, got a bit calmer, had a great race, won the Olympic selection points. But then, yeah, I mean, now what I'm doing, I see as another 3-4 layers on top of that.
So that was before you'd done any research or any studies in the oxygen advantage, that extended exhale?
No, so I think I would have had a little bit of an understanding. So I'd read the book. I was practicing yoga. And yeah, I think generally just interested in that stuff. Like, you can see it, like most of us have these watches now, hey, where you can like monitor heart rates and things, and just to watch that kind of speed up, slow down depending on how you're breathing is really fascinating. On heart rates, actually, that was another thing we've noticed since more nasal breathing in training is I'm operating about 10 beats lower, 10 beats per minute lower than I used to.
Wow.
My heart rate, certainly at Lee Valley where I train here in London, the first bridge, and it's about 20 to 25 seconds into the run, my heart rate's already at 200. And then that stays like that to the finish line. I'm like, how have I ever performed in this sport? How have I kept my composure? How do I feel good in those moments? I mean, I have a low resting heart rate, but I've always had a really fast heart rate when I'm exercising. And, you know, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I find it interesting that I work at the same intensity, nasal breathing, and it's significantly lower. It's still high. I'm still up at 190 at the same point, but that's quite a significant drop in essentially like not even a year.
Be interesting to see your heart rate now you've got into your newfound running, when you're doing endurance, what your heart rate settles into with your easy nasal breathing, with your gear 1, your gear 2 when you're running.
Yeah, I think that would be something to look at for sure. There's another thing that when we spoke last week, the stuff with the face.
Yeah.
So I find this fascinating as well. And I wasn't the first person to notice this. This was my mum, and this even happened to some degree before really, you know, taking control of this stuff. This happened the year before, so through the Olympic selection series. So I think just by improving day-to-day breathing, not necessarily thinking about it on the white water, you know, I was having some benefit. Now, throughout my career, I've almost been renowned for having the worst paddling face. And what it was, yeah, like my jaw, my bottom jaw would go in the direction that I'm turning. So if I'm turning left, my jaw would be over here. And, you know, every now and again we get a bad picture and we see it, but it's so infrequent now. And it's something we actively look at between myself and my coach. We've always done a lot of video review. But now I'm really interested in like the official race photographs, because they can sometimes tell us a bit more, especially if they catch you at a bad time. But what we see more and more now is my jaw stays straight, mouth closed. I've got an example if I can share my screen. So on the left, that's a classic Adam Burgess face, 2013. And now on the right, I mean, I look at this and I think, you know, this is where I know I've got work to do, because, you know, yes, you know, I like that my jaw's straight. I think mouth closed. I've got here how like my nostrils seem almost like flared. This is probably the most common thing we see now, is a face like this. I'd like it to look more relaxed. I think that's probably the next level. Maybe by Paris, a few more years of working on this stuff. That's something I think about in certainly more controlled environments like the gym. And in warm-ups, I think I tried to have this more relaxed face, because out there on the white water, it's not something you want to be thinking about when you know, we've got all the poles to go through. But this contrast, I just find it fascinating. And you know, I from what I understand from it was my yoga instructor training that first made me think of it, is this with the bandhas, how we have Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, and then Jalahandra Bandha in the throat. That's the first time I really considered this kind of jaw, throat, tongue posture, all of that as linked to our core. And I mean, an example from a weekend just gone, we had the British Open, and there was a really difficult move about 3/4 of the way down. I decided to take a really difficult option on it as well. You could make the move easier by going through it backwards. I was like, I'm taking this direct. And it's always, it was on the section of the river where that's where I can gas. That's the moment where I have to be so aware of my breath to make it to the finish. So I was kind of preempting that. There was an upstream gate on the left-hand side, and I got into that upstream gate, and I'm tired. I can feel this is the key moment in the run now, where if I lose my breath, I'm not making it to the finish line. Or I've rolled the dice, at least. So one sharp exhale, and then back to my nose. I knew I had to get back to my nose, because to do this next move, it was, it's hard to explain the ins and outs technically, but essentially it was a really balancy type move. So it wasn't certainly not using a lot of strength. It was more just about putting the boat in the right place and having the calmness in that moment when it's a race. You know, there's people watching, I'm against the clock, I'm very tired. Being calm and composed to have the balance to just rotate, really. It was more about just looking with the shoulders. And I knew in that moment that if I'm using my mouth, I've got no control in my core. My shoulders are going to drop. I might look that way, but this shoulder is probably going to come forwards. It's not going to be like this up here. And yeah, so that's new. That's another tool in my locker that we've not had before. I'd have loved to see some photos of my face as I went around that move. I think that could have been quite interesting. I'd like to think that I probably kept that composure. And it's something that we'd never really considered before. I think it's it's not something I've even spoken to my coach about too much, to be honest. It's certainly something that's going to be quite key through this next cycle. I think, to the point where, I'm interested to stick a GoPro on the front of the boat, facing me, and almost tease out, okay, where are the moments where I do lose that composure? And then it's, what accessory work do we do in the gym, or is it some kind of repeat effort under fatigue out on the white water? What can we do to kind of improve composure in these moments? Because there were moments at the games, there's some bad slow-mos of my face. So in particular, I had to really, it's quite hard to explain, but where the front of the boat really stuck to the water and I had to turn to the right, and I've dragged it through the water rather than turn the boat lightly over the water. Like a technical mistake. Got myself out of trouble, like using my physicality. But then it's straight into a really intense move, and you can see the jaw go. And I'd settled it, but we literally reviewed the performance a few days ago, and yes, okay, I've not got the composure in the face. I've nailed the move, but on the exit of that next move, that was the first moment really to get to relax. And you can see I've just had to take the pace off a little bit just to recompose myself. I think I'd love to get to a position where, yes, something can go wrong like that in the run. I do need to use that top gear to get myself out of trouble, but I can return faster. Even if there's an intense move straight away, I can actually recover before it and not need to get it out the way before I can then just find my rhythm again. Yeah.
I love that. And bringing, again, most people aren't thinking of those technical moves, those rotations and those postures, and then linking that to the breath, and the breath helping with that as well. It's almost 2 o'clock. That's gone really quickly. Questions, everybody's just been mesmerized. Any questions? If you've got a couple more minutes, if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask, or you want to raise your hand or pop it in the chat. Yvonne has had to pop off. She said, interesting, really interesting and helpful. I think the point is there that yes, you're an elite athlete and you're at the Olympics, but all of the stuff you've referenced there, particularly like that warm-up stuff, which is fascinating and excellent, you can bring that into any sport, any fitness level. If you're going hiking, you could use that warm-up exactly the same as that. Obviously, maybe not as intense as that, but you can use that type of warm-up as well. Robert has got his hand up. Robert, hi. You need to...
Yes, I've done it.
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Hi, that's so I've got hundreds of questions, but trouble is that if I start one of them, it'll get in too long. So I'll keep this one simple because it's just one I thought about last night. Do you use the Patrick sports mask at all?
Oh, so not yet. Not yet, but that is on my radar. Particularly now I'm running. It's not something I want to wear out on the white water.
No.
I have taped my mouth shut on the white water before, but I mean, my teammates already think I'm weird, so I can't go too far. But no, the sports mask is something, and particularly, now I'm running, I'm really interested to try out.
I imagine it's used mostly for high altitude conditions and stuff like that, for athletes that to replicate these conditions, just reduces the amount of oxygen. But it was when you mentioned the snotty stage, because I found that I use it kind of sparingly, probably for the same reasons, just not to get, I think the first time I used it, it's got various settings that you can use, but I think that what happens all the time is that I end up with a it's not mucus. Well, it is mucus, but it's not. It's
a pool at the bottom.
And I noticed, obviously, when I'm doing breathing exercises and when I'm sort of various kind of things, that I get a stage, especially to begin with, not so much now. Apart from then, that I get into a kind of a snotty, which I think is good because I don't know what's happening really. I haven't got into the science of it, but anyway, that was that one. So that's my question. I've got hundreds more, but you know,
Put them on an email. We'll
I
do
put
it
on
on
an
email.
email.
I think Grace going to share my email address at the end. So,
Kevin, how are you, sir?
Recovering, but not too bad. So, Adam, how resistant was your coach to the suggestion of breathwork? The reason I ask is I've been approached to potentially work with athletes in something I don't really know anything about, swimming and rowing, actually. And I have an awareness that I'm not a swimmer, I'm not a rower, but breathwork will really help. And I don't want to create friction between the athletes and their coaches, because clearly they have coaches that are going to be really effective at coaching them in those disciplines. So I was curious about, and I know every athlete and every coach is slightly different, but your experience that you had with your coach, if you go and say, look, there are these things I want to try, I'm guessing your coach must have little ego to kind of take on board what you're suggesting, but what advice could you give in that instance would be really valuable?
Yeah, really good question. I think, because from my personal experience, this is more, I kind of done this on my own. And then after I'm starting to see some results, I take it to my coach and be like, okay, it's this. So I think, you know, let them see the benefits is probably the main bit of advice, really, because it speaks for itself. I think the difficult thing is that understanding that, yes, it's going to be harder to start with. I think particularly in events like that where, you know, it's linear, you know how fast you are already. If all of a sudden you're nasal breathing and you're slower, yes, that's a hit to the ego and it probably looks like it's not working. But I think, you know, we've got the literature. The Wuren studies in particular are great ones to use, I guess, as a bit of evidence of, look, no, with a bit of work, we can get them up here. And I think, you know, my philosophy at the moment is around, you know, I'm a bit more little and often, as opposed to, you know, smashing my body and feeling crap for the next 3 days. And I think, you know, the nose, particularly early on when it is difficult, acts as that bit of a limiter, where we're training, we're improving technically, we're improving our cardiovascular system, but we're not taxing ourselves, we're not taxing the muscular skeletal system. And that's where some of the magic is, because the volume of training that you can then do obviously is so much more. And then once the nasal breathing catches up, that's when it's just levels. A lot of the coaches, I imagine, you know, they're probably pretty active themselves. So that's something I've done with my coach is, he's a runner. So I've got him to try it. I'm like, well, on your next run, try and nasal breathe, see how you can get on.
Did he thank you for it?
No.
Did you tell him to do it the whole run, or like do it for 5 minutes and that's it?
He keeps trying it. So he'll say, oh, yeah, I've tried it, but I'll do it for a few minutes and I can't. But I'm working on him. I think because I'm a runner now, and he sees my pace, I think he's like, oh, okay, no, maybe there is something in that. But I think, you know, it's probably more the athletes are probably going to be easier to convince than the coaches.
That's my feeling, but I also
want evidence.
I want it to be easy for them to integrate. So I don't want to because I'm not a swimmer. I run primarily, but it's like I don't want to go in. I don't know how to coach swimmers, but I do know how to coach improve breathing to help you improve training. But I kind of want to be respectful of the relationships that the athletes already have. Yeah,
I think bring it in small stages. So kind of like it was almost accidental the way I've done it, but you know, just bring it into the recovery to start with. Can you recovery breathe through your nose?
Yeah.
Okay, now can you do some effort through the nose? I know Patrick, in his lessons, just suggest, you know, try and just do 50% of the training nasally. Don't try and commit to all of it, because there's so much more going on for us. You know, we're thinking about technical cues, We've got strength and conditioning coach, physio, psychologist. Everything is, you know, pulling us in lots of different directions. So just small bits. And if it is something that's supplementary to training, so like me going for a run now, that's extra. I don't really count that in training. I don't log it on my training plan. That's just me practicing breathing. And I think that, you know, you can make gains there that, you know, will show then in the pool or on the water.
Okay, thank you. I've got a tip for you as well in your anaerobic recoveries. If you're blowing off the CO2 in like 3 or 4 breaths, try doing 4 or 5 physiological sighs, because so you inhale twice quickly through your nose, one through your mouth, and it pushes open the alveoli in your lungs. So
okay.
And then do the breath holds, and because I'll do this when I'm running, if I'm doing hard interval work, doing that really helps, because you get your lungs open, you get the air back in, and then you just start calming everything down.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Thanks. I'll try that.
Do.
Yeah, if anybody watched last week's Lunch and Learn, Louise did that 1 minute recovery. So again, she was saying about breathing through the nose in that recovery and measuring your heart rate drop within that minute. So that's, like you say, it's a good point to put in there. And I think, like you're saying, that in the Warren study, really emphasizing that they just didn't go straight from mouth breathing to nose breathing. It took, what was it, 6 months, did you say, to get to actually building that? So it's not just changing things straight away.
Your example in our training as well, sorry, just before we move on, when you encouraged us to watch Kipchoge running, relaxed face, smiling, mouth's closed, but he's smiling, and obviously, you know, he's unreal athlete, and it's like, well, tell him he's wrong. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that's true, and it's a really good video of that, because it's literally front on and you can see him, so it's proof. It's not fake news. Andy.
Yeah, a question on your recovery, on the recovery side of things, Adam. Sleep, have you introduced any breathing on that side of things that has helped you significantly?
Yeah, so I mean, to begin with, just the taping, that was a massive improvement. But then, you know, I nap once or twice a day, and you know, I don't always fall asleep when I nap. I listen to a binaural beats soundtrack, and when I lie down, I essentially just go through, I either do my in for 4, out for 6, because I'm trying to just calm my nervous system down. I've usually already started that when I'm warming down at the Whitewater Centre, but when I get home, I'll continue that. I also use that as my opportunity to practice the breathe light. I like going through the 3 stages. I don't like jumping straight into thinking about chemistry, mechanics, and resonance. I like to just go and think about, you know, how light can I breathe? Can I make the hairs in my nose not move? I like to think about that first, then the mechanics. And for me, the 1 cue in particular is that lateral movement of the lower ribs. I love that cue. And then I come into the resonance, so, you know, 5-5 or 4-6. And yeah, I mean, I'm probably usually asleep before I've gone through it all. But if I've not, I'll happily lie there and do that for 20 minutes or so.
And I guess you must get nervous at some point. I mean, in these competitions, it's maybe not, you don't want to fall asleep because it's maybe during a day or something like that. So is that the sort of thing you would use just to bring bring yourself down, just sort of come out?
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
must suffer from nerves.
No, big time. And I think this was a huge game that we made for the Olympics. So the World Championships before the Games, 2019, I had a really disappointing performance in flying all year. I think never out of the top 6 in any round of competition as well. I was having such a good season, and I came to the World Championships probably for the first time being like, I can have this. You know, I'm fast enough here. And Warming up for the semi-final, I was just so like lethargic, felt heavy, arms weren't really working, I was yawning. And, you know, I'm theorizing now that, you know, from the moment I saw them set the course, so we didn't get to practice. We paddle the river, but where the poles go, that's just set the night before. I'm theorizing now that from the moment I saw the course, my mind is on, and I'm thinking about it. You know, subconsciously, I'm probably just going through the movements and stuff. You can't sustain that, right? You can't be on for that long, right? So that was a big thing at the games for me, was managing my energy on I guess on like a nervous system level, throughout the day. So we raced in the afternoons, so trying to keep my mornings really relaxed. We're in a funny time zone. I had some friends in Australia. I had them on the phone in the morning, just chatting with them and their dog, just really calm things. I used it between runs. So a tight turnaround. I had a bit longer on the heat stay, an hour and a half maybe. So I napped for 10 minutes between runs. I definitely didn't fall asleep. But I lay down in the team area with my binaural beats, thinking about Breathe Light. And I've not experienced that feeling since. So I think that's something I might have gotten over in using this. I even used it in between semis and finals with a 45-minute gap, and we've got to warm down, review the video of my race, review the video of everyone else's races to see if we can go faster, get changed again, get back on, warm up. It was still that important to me that it was like, well, I have to fit it in, even if it's just 5 minutes, just calm the nervous system down so I can go again. I think it's so important.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Brilliant. Gillian says the fundamental points are relevant to us all, and we'll follow your progress, Adam. Thank you so much. So talking of progress, what are your plans for the future? 2024 Paris?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I had a bit of a tough time, to be honest, since competing in Tokyo, which was expected by my support team, and they were prepared for it. I wasn't expecting it to be as hard as it was, but I think, you know, even on a chemical level, it was explained to me how, you know, my just baseline dopamine was just way off. So yeah, I didn't have much motivation for anything really to get out of bed for a little while. Drank too much, like all of that. You know, I've been in the absolute shape of my life. Didn't touch a drop of alcohol all year. Only ate organic food. I was doing everything, and you know, treating my body like shit for a month after.
On the plane back.
Yeah. So it's just like, it just felt awful basically. And it was when I watched a race in France that I chose not to go to, and saw the guys racing out there, that I was like, you know what, no, I wish I was there. I want to do this. I've got my motivation back. The running, actually, that was something that, because it's new, it's inspiring, that's like a new thing for me that's got me motivated again. But I was asked the other day if I was still motivated to go, considering I've already been to an Olympics, and it was like, if anything, it's more like I've had a taste, I've come painfully close, and yeah, I mean, I want to go win it. So at least one more games, possibly two. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other questions? We've gone way over time, but that's fascinating. So much good information there. Any other questions before we finish off? Let me share Adam's email. Are you happy for people to get in contact with you? So that
yeah, absolutely.
I
can put my Instagram handle in there as well.
Oh yeah, sorry, I should have put your Instagram on there. I forget about Instagram. Stick your Instagram in. And any Facebook or anything like that you want to put in there. Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you and also work with you. I know we're just about to do your certification. So yes, thank you very much for joining, everyone. And I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. Thanks again, Adam, and we'll catch up very soon.
Awesome. Thanks very much, guys. Bye.